welcome to another Liverpool transfer show on Forward Tour Podcast. My name's Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Seems to be that we've got a bit of an update today, as it looks like Liverpool have agreed terms with Ibrahim Mbaye. So we'll talk about him in more detail. Plus, we'll give my reaction to yesterday's game, which of course was a 2-0 victory against Como. And we'll speak about other rumors that have been circulating today as well. But before we begin, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let's talk about the match before we speak about the transfer news. And of course, this was the match yesterday as we faced Como. We faced them twice, to be fair, but I'm going to speak about the game that took place in the evening, as it had pretty much our first team players on the pitch. So my thoughts on the game is actually an entertaining game. To be fair, we played some good football, especially in the first half. For me, standout performers were Jack Hay. It looks like we've hit the jackpot. No pun intended there. With this new signing, he looked so mature, so assured on and off the ball, and there was reservations in terms of if he's going to be able to fill the boots of Ibu Konate, who of course departed earlier this summer. If I'm being honest, and I'm not just saying it because Konate is no longer a Liverpool player, I think this is an upgrade in terms of the capabilities of what Konate had. Jake just looks like he is going to be a Rolls Royce type of defender. That's the vibe I get from him. So good on the ball. There were times where he received the ball and went past two players. That was the first touch I think he had in the match. And, he looked so confident, so assured on the ball that it was literally nothing for him. So for me, that's good because it means that we have a confident centre back that is good on the ball, that can drive with the ball if necessary as well. So for me, that is a very much a plus point. I think the only concern with Jack Hay would be his injuries. He's suffered a shoulder injury just before the end of last season. He's come to the club and he's not been fully fit. This was his first performance in a Liverpool shirt. I think he had to come off at halftime. It looked like he was struggling a little bit, but that might just be fatigue more than anything else. So for him, it's just about staying fit, to be honest with you. So hopefully Liverpool can not rush him too much in terms of making him, first choice immediately. I think he has the quality, but we just have to manage in terms of his minutes and make sure, he's fully fit and healthy to be competing or to be playing on a regular basis. But for me, that was a great performance from the defender. I'm sure you guys have seen it all over social media and all over YouTube. The fans are so excited about his performance last night. So yeah, it's a positive look altogether. And then there were other performers I thought really stood out for me. Uh, I would say Frimpong, a player that I think I might be a minority has been vouching for, to say that, give him a chance. He will, show his capabilities this season. And the argument is always, can he play right back? Can he play wing back? Is he a right winger? Let's just, let him settle in the team firstly. And we know his primary position is right back slash wing back, but it depends, of course, the shape that you're playing in. And we were back four, so he's not going to play as a wing back as such. But in terms of where he's positioned on the pitch, it might be further up in comparison to what you normally see in a right back. But what he showed yesterday was directness in terms of his dribbling ability. The assist that he provided for Gakpo wasn't a piece of cake. He literally had to do a sort of a diagonal run inside the box and then found the perfect cross for Gakpo. Had to hit it with a bit of pace as well. And fair play to Gakpo, controlled it and hit with his left foot and scored the opening goal there. So that was a great move altogether. But he showed a lot more confidence on the ball. I feel like last season it might have been the instructions that he received from Arne Slot, but he just seemed a bit more hesitant. He didn't really play his natural game. I feel like under Iraola already, we've only seen him for one or two games. He looks like he's been given that confidence to express himself on the pitch, go in full flow when you've got the ball, attack aggressively when needed. And I think he's definitely reaping the rewards there. So look, this is a sign, hopefully, for the upcoming season. Some fans will tell me to calm down because it's pre-season in terms of the recent performances. Yes, but this is what we've got to analyze on, I guess, isn't it? So, we can only judge in terms of what we see on the pitch. And at the minute, he's been very positive and he's looking like he's playing with confidence again. The version that I saw at Bayer Leverkusen is what I feel like I'm seeing right now, which is a huge positive. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how Frimpong develops going forward. And then you had Arojo, who of course played his debut yesterday as well. And he looked very calm, very assured on the ball. What it tells me is that we've got some cover now for our centre backs. We've actually got players available if needed. So it shows me we've got strength in depth, which we've not had for quite some time. So that's a positive. I'm still hoping and praying that we do sign a right back, but that's probably another conversation for later in the show because we have been linked with a couple right backs. And I feel like he is someone that is going to provide competition for that centre back role, but also cover for right back if needed. So for me, a good start to his Liverpool career. And other players that for me, I feel like we need to talk about is Isak. Isak was someone that really looked sharp. He's probably the fittest I've seen him sort of play in a Liverpool shirt. When we signed him last year, he didn't have a preseason, didn't really do any game time whatsoever. Remember, he was on strike with Newcastle, so he didn't want to take part in any of their preseason fixtures, and he never travelled with them. But this time around, he looks sharper. But having said all of that, there is a concern with Isak in terms of his fitness because during the game, I think he clashed into one of the players in terms of his knee bashed into someone, and I thought, God, has he picked up an injury? So there's always that worry, that always that concern that he's picked up an injury, and then you look at the bench and thinking, who's actually going to come in to replace him as a striker? We don't really have strikers at our disposal at the minute. Gakpo is probably the only one at the minute, but he's also been linked to a move away from the club. So it's not very clear cut in terms of what we're going to do. But I'm hoping that we can address that area. But that's something we can talk about today as well. And another player is Florian Wirtz, of course. Is a player that I'll probably defend all day long. He looked decent, but I still feel like there's a lot of levels for him to unlock. He's definitely playing further up the pitch, which is a positive for me, and he's playing closer to the striker. So I'm hoping that allows him to express himself and be a bit more effective in that final third. But he looks like he's just gearing up to full fitness. He's not quite there yet, but he's shown little touches here and there that he's still got that ability, which I don't think should be questioned. Although a lot of fans are questioning it, which everyone's entitled to do. But for me, I think that's a bit far fetched. He's definitely a quality player, and I feel like he will be a success for us this season. So yeah, overall, good game, good workout. Last fixture before we start our Premier League campaign. Time's gone so quick. We were literally playing this Sunday against Newcastle United. So it's going to be a great game for us. So yeah, hopefully it's a victory for us in the end. Um, just got a comment here from Double D. We got Double D say full metal jacket. Listen, it looks like it. We're ready to play heavy metal football. So we've got a full metal jacket right there at our disposal. So yeah, very positive performance from him. Great debut. And yeah, hopefully we see more of that level performances going forward. Now let's go and speak about the transfer rumors now. And the first one isn't quite official, but it is being presented by a reliable source. And the news is that Liverpool have reached an agreement with the PSG winger. The youngster has agreed a 5-year contract and has prioritized a move to Anfield despite interest from Bayer Leverkusen. And Liverpool are now pushing to bring in both Mbaye and Bradley Barcola from PSG. So this is positive for me. I always felt like the transfer fee wasn't going to be a stumbling block, but you know, you always hear different sources. Well, one will say that he's worth £35 million. Another source will say it's 50 or 60. So we're not quite sure in terms of the parameters of the deal. How much do PSG actually want for Mbaye? But I guess, it's a positive that he's agreed terms with us if it's done privately. But I don't think that was a stumbling block. The stumbling block has always been agreeing a fee with PSG. So I'm hoping we get something done very soon. And with time running out, it's the 17th today. We literally got 2 weeks left. So, we've really got to get act together. For me, if Mbaye does sign, I see him challenging for that right wing position. And I think his sort of competitor for that role would be Munoz. I think that would be the position that they'll be challenging for. And then on the other side, you'll have Rion Gomoa, hopefully Bradley Barcola, if that deal is concluded. But at this stage, it's Cody Gakpo. So we'll have to wait and see in terms of, where we are with the squad. But this is positive. I'm hoping that because this is sealed, that we can now get a transfer fee agreed later on this week. So maybe we'll get a bomber in some shape or form very soon this week. And sticking to the PSG script, the latest with Barcola is that Barcola and Mbaye were left out of PSG's squad yesterday against Lens, and both players are interested in a move to Liverpool. PSG have lowered their asking price from 145 million pounds to 125, while Mbaye's contract expires in 2028. And PSG have already signed their replacements, quite frankly. They've signed Akuluch, they've signed Ferran Torres, and they've signed Miko Gutz. So they've already signed three attackers. So it's very much clear that these two individuals are no longer wanted at PSG. And then Luis Enrique made a comment to say that when a player doesn't have a smile when coming here, it's better to look for another solution. So that is quite clear that Bradley Barcola is out the door. And I say let's welcome him with open arms because for us, we definitely need another winger to our squad. In fact, I'll probably say we need two wingers if you include Mbaye to that scenario as well. So for me, he's the perfect profile to what we need. Some will say, he's not quite the finished article. He still needs to refine his finishing up top, which I would agree with. But he's one of those players that he gets into so many great positions during the game that it's only a matter of time that he, improves and increases his goal ratios, especially as he will be playing on a regular basis. He will be a starter at Liverpool, in my opinion. Whether it's on the left or the right, that will be debatable, or I guess, remains to be seen. I think he'll predominantly play on the left-hand side, but during games may interchange and, feature on the right-hand side as well. But for me, if that is true that they've lowered the fee to 125 million pounds, I think that should be enough for us to conclude the deal. It might be where we agree like 110 plus add-ons that lead up to 125. So if that's the case, I'm all for it. So I'm hoping that we get another bomber with regards to Bradley Barcola. Hopefully we get, you know, double the news in terms of players coming through the door, and hopefully those two players are Bradley Barcola and Mbaye. Now let's look at our own squad right now, and let's speak about Cody Gakpo. So at the minute, the rumor, please do take it with a pinch of salt, is that Gakpo is fully convinced about joining Tottenham after talks with De Zerbi. He has apparently agreed terms, and Spurs are preparing an official bid for the Liverpool winger this week. Liverpool value him at 60 to 70 million pounds, while a package of around 65 million pounds should be enough to secure the deal. Now, my take on this, if Tottenham do in fact offer us 60, 65, or 70 million pounds, I think it would be the best of interest for Liverpool to accept that bid because that is a huge amount of money for Cody Gakpo. That's not me trying to devalue the player. I think if you look at his current contract and current situation, that valuation is, you know, a prime figure for a player of his quality because I feel like if we were to sell him next year or the year after, the value will decrease. He's only here for about 2, 3 years in terms of the new contract that he signed. So we feel like, his stock is quite high, especially in terms of his status as a player, but also from a contract and a financial perspective as well. So if we get that sort of bid, then I think Liverpool will seriously need to consider the offer. Now, what I will say is this. if Cody Gakpo is moving to Tottenham, and I'm probably thinking a bit far ahead now. Let's say Mbaye and Bradley Barcola come through. So we've got two wingers there. So then you've got on paper, you've got Rio, Barcola, Mbaye, and Munoz. Four wingers right there. So for me, there is no need to sign a replacement for Gakpo, if that makes sense. I would rather that we actually sign a striker to replace Cody Gakpo in the team. So that striker will provide cover and competition for Isak in the middle. That way, you literally covered all three positions there with two players competing for each role. So for me, that would be the way I would look at it. I think if Cody Gakpo does decide to leave, we shouldn't look for a left winger to replace him. We should, in fact, try and sign a striker to replace his position in the squad. So let me know what you guys think. If that's the way to go, or do you think we need another winger in the team as well? So drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. Another rumor regarding one of our players is McAllister. Liverpool plan to open new contract talks with McAllister later this year. Real Madrid and Tottenham, out of all the teams, have shown interest earlier this summer, while Chelsea and Man City have also made contact. McAllister has 2 years left on his contract, and Liverpool set a €100 million threshold in July. Now, my thoughts on this, I would say let's take one step back. Let's not get too excited. Let's not just offer contracts for the sake of it now. I think let's see how he performs because I have a feeling we won't sell him. And that's not what I want. If you guys have watched the shows and you've watched my channel before, you will know my take on McAllister. I think this is the perfect time to cash in on him. I don't think he's the same level of player that he was a few years ago. I feel like due to him playing a high volume of games over the years, it's had an effect on his body. He's not as dynamic as he used to be. So for me, he's pretty much burnt out in terms of, being a dynamic and energetic midfielder. And I feel like if you look at our current squad right now, we need a different profile. We need someone that is a defensive midfielder, a specialist in that sort of role. I think that's the type of midfielder we need in our squad. So because of that, I feel like this is a perfect time to cash in on him. And look, the article said that he's valued at €100 million, which is 95 million pounds. If we were to get that kind of money, we could easily go out and sign a Wharton or whoever fits that profile. And I think that elevates our quality in midfield dramatically. So I would cash in on him. But if the club decides that they would like him to stay for one more season, then look, I'm gonna give him my support. Of course I will. I'm a Liverpool fan first and foremost. But I will still have reservations in terms of how impactful he'll be. I would love to be proven wrong. So for me, it doesn't really matter what happens. If he progresses and actually performs like the McAllister 2, 3 years ago, I'll hold my hand up and say, look, he certainly delivered. And if it benefits my team, then I'm all for it. But from what I've seen the last year or two, I just feel like there's a decline in terms of his level of play. Having said that, I'm not saying he's a terrible player all of a sudden. I just don't think he's suited to the Premier League anymore. I think if he was to move to a La Liga or Serie A, that type of football will suit him a little bit better because it's more from a technical standpoint and it's not as physical or as intense as the Premier League. So let's see what happens with McAllister. If he is going to stay, then that's all good. But what I will say is don't offer him a contract straight away. Let's see how he plays during the season. And maybe it's a conversation you have midway through. And then if all parties are happy, then you offer it to him at the end of this coming season, I guess. So let's see what happens. But if it was my choice, I would cash in on McAllister this summer. Now, a rumor that certainly surprised me over the weekend was regarding Kwanzaa. And apparently, Arsenal and Manchester United are battling to sign the Bayer Leverkusen defender. And apparently, Arsenal have already opened talks with Leverkusen and they value the player at €35 million, which is the amount of money that Bayer Leverkusen paid Liverpool last summer. So My thoughts on that report. £35 million seems very, very low for Kwanzaa. I know he's only been away at the club for about a year, but he's actually improved quite a bit since he's joined Leverkusen. So for me, 35 million euros, which is what they paid, isn't justified. I think the valuation should be a little bit higher. I'd probably say as close to as £50 million. And what I'm surprised about Arsenal and United being linked with him. Arsenal, of course, need a centre back with Saliba out for the foreseeable future. And it was also reported that Liverpool's buyback clause had expired this summer. I think our buyback clause was about £70 million, which is something that we weren't willing to consider. But next summer it would be £50 million if he remains as a Bayer Leverkusen player. So I'll be honest with you, if he was to join Arsenal, I'm not going to lose any sleep if I'm being honest with you. And that's not me just throwing shade at Konza because he's no longer a Liverpool player. I think he's very talented. He showed a lot of promise when he was at Liverpool, but he's not a game changer for me. He's not going to change the way Arsenal defend. He's not going to replace Saliba altogether. He's not at that level at all. So for them, it's a good signing. It's a solid signing. He's a homegrown player as well. So that ticks another checkbox for them. But I think in terms of quality, it's just a good defender that they've signed, but doesn't really, scare me or I'm not worried about it going forward. So let's see if he decides to move over to the Gunners. Hopefully he's not even considering Manchester United because that should be a no-no straight away. But we'll have to wait and see and understand if there's any developments in the story in the coming days and weeks. Internally, let's stick to one of our players, and that is Curtis Jones. And apparently, Inter are ready to sell Luis Enrique to raise funds for a move to sign Curtis Jones. Roma have been in dialogue over a deal that is worth around 30 million euros for Luis Enrique. Um, and Liverpool want 40 million euros for Jones, which is about 35 million pounds. But they're hoping to negotiate it for a little bit less. So my thoughts in this rumor, I feel like I say the same thing again and again. It's that they've got interest, they're showing interest, they want to place a bid, but they don't have the funds. They've just signed Jess Spence, but I think that money was probably from one of the other sales for Tessie, I think it was. So they'll have to sell someone else. Luis Henrique might be the player that they sell in order to raise the funds. Now, it's a bit of a strange one because generally I would say that I don't see Curtis Jones leaving, but I actually think he will leave. Seems quite adamant that he's out of the door. He's shown a few moments in preseason that wasn't received very well from the fans in terms of having an argument on the pitch about the captain's armband. Um, he's been speaking to Chiesa, which was reported about life in Italy. And apparently he's been following Inter Milan players on social media, liking their posts and all that jazz. So it's quite clear that he's got his eyes set on the move to Inter Milan. If that's the case, they got to pay up the transfer fee. They got to bring that bag over and make sure it's exactly what we want. Otherwise, it's no deal. So I don't know what that would do to Curtis Jones, but if the club aren't willing to match what we value him, which is about 35, 40 million pounds, then there's no deal. So let's see what happens. If I was to give you my opinion on this transfer, will it happen? I think he will. I think eventually Curtis Jones will leave this summer. My only concern is that do Liverpool actually sign a replacement because he might not actually sign someone, which would be a little bit of a concern. Um, so it's one of those things where we'll have to wait and see. Is he going to be um, a Liverpool player or is he going to have to stay? But the thing is, if he ends up staying, then it might be a thing where we have to give him a new contract. He's on his final year of his contract. So if that's the case, then will he want to stay or will the club be willing to pay what he wants? Because I heard rumors that he wanted about 150k per week. He earns, I think, 30, 40k. I'm not entirely sure, but he earns a fraction of that request there. So we'll have to wait and see. I do like Curtis Jones. I think he's a very talented player, but if he's got his mind on, on a move away from the club, then I feel like this might be the best time to part away. So let's see what happens going forward. But a player that could come in and replace him is Adam Wharton. Now, he would be the player that I think would be a great replacement for Curtis Jones because he's a progressive player. But at the same time, he probably is the better player in terms of his defensive duties. I feel like he is a player that has great sort of understanding of the game. He knows when to pass forward or when to, hold on to the ball because with midfielders they seem to rush it quite a bit. He's a good reader of the games. He knows exactly what he's doing. Pretty much label him as a maestro because he can do a bit of everything. If I'm being honest with you, so he would be the perfect signing. I do have an inkling that the reason we haven't placed a bid is because we haven't sold Curtis Jones or we haven't sold a midfielder from the first team. I think once that happens, then it might open the door for us to give Crystal Palace a phone call and try and get him over the line. We'll have to wait and see. But I do believe that he's definitely a player on our shortlist, and I would be over the moon if we could sign him. But it just depends, on the situation at the club. Are they willing to spend more money? Because of course, I think all of our eggs are in one basket, and that is for the two wingers that we're trying to get. But there are other positions that need to be addressed. So let's see if the midfield is a priority or is something that we wait until the January window. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And speaking to Crystal Palace, we spoke about this winger, or should I say wing back actually, is Daniel Munoz. Um, we were linked to, well, Everton were linked with him for about £20 million. I was suggesting that, why don't we place a bid? £20 million is nothing. Now you've got another team in the queue. You've got Tottenham who are trying to sign him to replace Jess Spence, who, of course, we know has been sold to Inter Milan. So my thoughts on this, if Liverpool do want to sign a right back, I think Munoz would be the ideal signing. He would be a similar profile to what we have in terms of Frimpong, where you've got two forward-thinking, aggressive fullbacks, but can still do a decent job from a defensive standpoint. And at £20 million, it's absolute peanuts. I know he's 30 years of age, but sometimes you got to do these short-term fixes in order to compete for the upcoming campaign. So I'm hoping Liverpool can do that. But right now, it's a bit up in the air because we're not actually linked with the player. I'm just hoping that we can try and make an approach. But if Liverpool don't have it on their cards, then unfortunately it won't happen. Just got a couple of comments here from Jordan. It says finally, I'm waiting for the here we go. We all are. We're all waiting for the here we go. Hopefully we'll hear it in the next few days. Double D says Munoz is an Irola player, definitely. I agree with you as well. I think he is perfectly suited for the Irola system. So I hope that Irola, you know, gets Richard Hughes on the phone and says, look, we need another right back. He's only for £20 million. It's not that much in this market. So let's try and get him on board. And the experience would be good to have in the backline as well. So let's see what happens. But at the minute, not sure if we'll get a right back, if I'm being honest with you guys, but we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of right backs, we've been linked with Chelsea's um, right back in Malo Gusto, and apparently Chelsea could be willing to lower their asking price of £75 million if Liverpool step up their interest in signing the French right back. Uh, the Blues' current valuation is considered extremely high, but there could be room for negotiation if Liverpool make their move. My thoughts on that is, firstly, £75 million, you're having a laugh because that player is not worth that price at all. And since when have we been linked with Gusto? This report just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't even think we even contacted Chelsea about Gusto. And for me, on the ball, he's very talented, he's very quick, good dribbler, has a decent cross on him. But as an all-rounder, I would still have reservations of him. And for that price, come on. We've got to focus on addressing our positions in our squad. So there's no way we're spending 50, 60, £70 million on a right back. I'm begging for us to go for Munoz, who's available for 20. We might not even go for the play in the end. So for me, uh, I feel like this is just a report made for clickbait content for more than anything else. I don't think we're in the market for Gusto. We are in the market for a right back, but I don't think he's the player that we're looking at. So yeah, it's a no for me. And it looks like it's a no from Double D, who said Gusto, hell no. So I think that pretty much paints the picture there. Now, I spoke about my concerns about Isak earlier in the show, where if he was to pick up an injury, who would replace him in the team? At the minute is Gakpo, but if Gakpo was to depart, there really isn't anyone in our squad that can play that striker role. At the minute, into the what where the squad is, you have Chiesa who can play that striker role, not his favorite role, but can do a shift there, I guess. If you were to get Barcola could play that role as well. Munoz, Rio and Gamal wouldn't, in my opinion. And if you go further down, Jaden Dance would be an option, but he's unfortunately injured right now, and Will Wright is still, developing. So we shouldn't rush the process to get him to cover for Isak. So I feel like we should be looking at the striker market. And there was a report today that AC Milan are willing to sell 7 players before the window closes. And a couple names stuck out for me. So the first was Nkuku. So my question is to you guys, would you consider Nkuku as a potential signing? In terms of his profile, he predominantly plays a striker, but his natural position is a number 10. So he gives you a bit of variation where he can play 2 roles in the squad. I personally think that ship has sailed, but I thought let me present the question for you guys in case you think he would be a viable option. But I don't think, he's that player anymore. I think he's lost his edge since he joined Chelsea, and I think that's down to him picking up so many injuries over the years. So he's not the same dynamic player as he used to be. Another option would be Jimenez as well. If Arne Slot was there, I'm sure he would have got this player through the door immediately. But he could be a viable option where he gives us a different profile, tall, strong, physical striker, left-footed, so different type of profile there as well. So maybe he could be an option, but I haven't seen him in recent times to see, if he's still that lethal striker that he was when he used to play for finals in the Eredivisie, or has he, declined as well? So just a couple options there, because I do feel like the striker market is a bit thin in terms of finding that profile that will provide cover and quality for our attacking lineup. So we'll have to wait and see. But I thought let me bring these 2 players up and you guys can give me your take. Just got a comment here from Tafsir. Big up yourself. He says it bloody pisses me off that we're buying someone else's 18-year-old to get into the team, but not willing to give any of our youth players a chance to get into the team. If you look at our current crop of players, Rian Gamal is definitely going to get game time this year. So that's a 17, 18-year-old that will get game time. Kumas, there's reports that he might stay. So if that's the case, I'm sure he'll get lots of opportunities in the team as well. So, there's 2 wingers right there that, are 18 years of age that will be given an opportunity. Of course, we have to look at the market and see, what are the best options out there for the right wing. Unfortunately, there aren't many options. Some will say when you got this player, that player, but it's all about value for money. It's about how high of a ceiling that player has, and Mbaye certainly has a high ceiling. So for me, I wouldn't have too many qualms about signing Mbaye. I think you're looking at the age rather than the ability. He's a very talented player for his age. But also, he gives us competition. He gives us depth within the squad because he's not going to be a star immediately. You have to fight your way in order to be a starter at Liverpool. And that goes for the likes of Rio, Munoz, and whoever is in the squad as well. So you have to fight for your place in the team. We don't have a Mohamed Salah. So, everything is up for grabs. So for me, I'm not too concerned about the age profile there. But in terms of ability wise, he's a favored right winger. That is his primary position. So for me, he's someone that looks like he knows that role very well, scores goals from that position, and if he cuts in, he can, produce a decent left foot shot if needed. So I feel like he's a fantastic signing. But don't seem like you're as happy about that. But for me, I'm excited about the prospect of signing Mbaye. And just a couple more rumors before we close the show. We've got Bajtic being linked with a move to Getafe. But the interesting part about that rumor is that he has 1 year remaining on his contract with Liverpool. So if we were to loan him, that would make zero sense because at the end he will be available on a free transfer. Or if we were to sell him, then of course we would cash in on him. So it's interesting to see what kind of deal is being worked on because there is no clarity on that. It would make the perfect sense for us to sell him. As much as I would like for him to be part of the team, I don't think he has that capability. I don't feel like he's probably equipped to play in the Premier League. I think he's better suited to play in La Liga or in a different league where it's less intense, less physical, uh, and not as rigorous as it is when you're playing in the Premier League, for example. So for me, he's a talented player. Unfortunately, he has picked up quite a few injuries over the years, but I feel like he might need a fresh start, a fresh challenge elsewhere, and maybe La Liga is the route to go. So let's see what happens in regards to his story. But I think a move away from Liverpool on a permanent basis could be on the cards. And the final rumor of today is regarding Chiesa, and he's also being linked with a move to a La Liga team. He's been linked with the move to Valencia, and apparently, they want to sign a high quality name to be the game changer, and hopefully generate a buzz amongst the fans of Valencia. So my thoughts on this, a move to La Liga, especially for a team like Valencia, would make a lot of sense for Chiesa. He hasn't played in the Spanish league before, so that might be something that he could look forward to, something that he might, really flourish in. But selfishly, I want us to have as many options as possible in our team. But it also depends what we do. If we sign Mbaye, if we sign Barcola, and let's say Gakpo stays, then he's not needed because I feel like Gakpo would be the backup striker on paper for Isak, and then the other guys will occupy the two wing positions there. So he might be surplus to requirements in that regards. So it depends where we're at. Because if we sell Gakpo and not sign a striker, then I'd rather have Chiesa as an extra option for that striker role. Um, but we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of this rumor, I can see it happening, but at the minute, I think if Liverpool aren't comfortable about selling him, he won't be sold. So he'll have to stay for the time being. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to Double D, shout out to Jordan, and shout out to Tafsir for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, I do plan on doing another transfer talk show tomorrow, hoping and praying, we get a bomber, and I'm saying like a proper bomber, not just, you know, reports here and there. I want it to be where Fabrizio Romano tells us everything's agreed, everything's sealed and dealt. So for us, we can look forward to these new players coming through, and then we can talk and analyze them in more detail. Right now, it's just paper talk, so we'll just have to, take everything with a pinch of salt. But I'm looking forward to hopefully Liverpool signing some more players. The big question is how many? You know, if you're looking at the rumors right now, it could be two wingers. But what happens after those two wingers? Are we going to sign a midfielder? Are we going to sign a right back? Those are the questions that need answering. So hopefully we'll get the answers in due course. But until then, take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.